I slowed down my old Fiat near a brick house I knew on the outskirts of Derby. The car gave a final rattle and fell silent. It had been acting up lately, but I had decided not to spend money on a new one. The money was needed for more important things. For example, the monthly payments on the house I was heading to now. In my bag was an apple pie. I had spent the whole morning baking it from a recipe my mother had given me. Emily loved it when she was a child, although now she probably considers it too simple for her refined taste. At least Havish and Willow always enjoyed their grandmother's baking. As I climbed the steps to the front door, I caught myself feeling nervous again. Every visit to my daughter lately had been like walking through a minefield. You never knew where or when it would explode. I knocked 3 times. Our old family code, although Emily had probably forgotten it long ago. Jeremy opened the door. His thin, receding face, usually friendly, looked tense today. "Tallulah, hello?" He smiled awkwardly, letting me in. "Come in, Emily's in the kitchen." In the hallway, I noticed a new painting, an abstract work in an expensive frame. Another purchase? Even though just a month ago, Emily had complained about not having enough money to pay for Havish's school trip. I kept quiet. I had long since learned not to comment on my daughter's financial decisions. "Grandma's here!" Havish, my 14-year-old grandson, burst out of the living room, the spitting image of his father, just as lanky and awkward, but with lively, intelligent eyes. I hugged him, amazed at how fast he was growing. It seemed like only yesterday he could fit in my arms, and now he was almost as tall as me. "Hello, dear. How's school?" "Fine. I got top marks in maths," he smiled, showing off the braces I had paid for last year, taking the money from my small savings. "Good job." I took a small box out of my bag. "These are for you, the new headphones you asked for." His eyes lit up, but before he could say anything, Emily came out of the kitchen with a towel in her hands. "Mom, did you bring gifts again?" Her voice sounded annoyed. "We talked about this. Heavy should earn things like that, not just get them for nothing." "He earned them," I replied calmly. "He got an A in math. It's his responsibility to study hard," Emily snapped. "Heavy, take your headphones to your room and go help set the table." My grandson glanced at me guiltily and disappeared upstairs. Emily turned and walked back into the kitchen without even offering to let me in. I took off my coat and went into the living room, where my granddaughter Willow was sitting on the sofa, buried in her phone. "Hi, beautiful," I called softly. Willow looked up. At 17, she was the spitting image of Emily at the same age, same chestnut hair, same high cheekbones. Only her gaze was different, not open and dreamy like my daughter's had been, but wary and assessing. "Hi, Grandma." She put down her phone and reluctantly let me hug her. "How's your exam prep going? Are you still planning on going to law school?" "Yeah," she shrugged. "It's expensive, though." "Don't worry about that." I stroked her arm. Dinner's ready." Emily's sharp voice rang out from the dining room. Willow and I exchanged glances and headed for the table. The atmosphere at dinner was tense. Emily hardly looked up from her plate, and Jeremis tried to keep the conversation going by asking me about my garden and my new neighbors. But the conversation kept dying. The children were silent. Heavy was chewing intently, and Willow was constantly checking her phone under the table. "I hear your bakery is doing well," I finally said, turning to Emily. She was a manager at a small chain of bakeries. It was a career far from her childhood dreams of journalism, but it was stable. "It's okay," she replied curtly. "Nothing special." "Emily was promoted to regional manager last week," Jeremis said proudly. "Now she'll be in charge of 3 bakeries." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "Congratulations, dear." "Thanks," Emily said, blushing slightly. "But the salary is only 15% higher, and there will be 3 times as much work. But we need the money, especially with these monthly mortgage payments." I caught the hint and said nothing. Jeremis must have sensed something too, because he quickly changed the subject. "How are things with you, Tallulah? You said you signed up for some classes?" "Yes, digital photography," I smiled. "I finally decided to figure out all these settings and filters. My friend Marla and I are taking the class together." "Mom always finds something to spend money on," Emily muttered. "It's my money," I reminded her gently. "I worked as a nurse my whole life, and I have the right to spend some of my pension on myself." "Of course you do," she shrugged. It's just weird to see you spending money on a hobby and then complaining that you can't afford your medicine. I've never complained about medicine, I said, feeling irritation rising inside me. Don't make things up. Never mind, Emily said, getting up and starting to clear the plates. Who wants dessert? I brought apple pie, I said, pointing to my bag. Oh, cool, Havish said, perking up. We already bought tiramisu, Emily said curtly. Next time, please let us know. I took a deep breath, fighting back the hurt. I had been baking this pie for her all my life, and now it was suddenly not good enough for her family. It's okay, I smiled stiffly. Tiramisu is fine too. Can we have both desserts? Asked Havish. I want Grandma's cake. We should save it for breakfast, Jeremis interjected, glancing apologetically in my direction. When we moved on to dessert, the conversation somehow turned to the upcoming holidays. Mother's Day is on my day off this year, said Jeremis. I'm thinking of doing something special. I'll finally get to sleep in, Emily smiled. Usually the bakery is so busy on holidays that I crawl home exhausted. I heard there's going to be a Mother's Day festival in Marvin Park, I suggested. Maybe we could all go together. I could reserve a table at that Italian restaurant you like. A strange silence fell over the table. Emily and Jeremis exchanged glances. Actually, Mom, Emily said slowly, we were planning to spend the day just as a family, me, Jermaine, and the kids. I felt something break inside me. I thought I was family too, I said, my voice lower than I intended. Of course you're family, Jermaine said quickly. We just want to be alone, Emily interrupted him. No offense, Mom, but you understand. Mother's Day is for us and the kids. What about Tallulah? Jeremis asked. She's a mother too. I didn't invite my mom to Mother's Day, Emily said, looking me straight in the eye. This time we're celebrating without her. I saw Jeremis look away awkwardly, Willow bury her face in her phone, and Havish lower his head, poking at his dessert with his spoon. A lump formed in my throat, but I didn't let myself show how much those words hurt me. Well, I said calmly, placing my napkin next to my plate. In that case, I won't keep you. Mom, don't be dramatic. Emily rolled her eyes. I'm not being dramatic, I said, getting up from the table. Thanks for dinner. Everything was delicious. I have to go. Grandma, but you just got here, Hevish said, confused. I have things to do, dear, I stroked his head. See you next time. Tallulah, don't leave like that. Jeremis also stood up. Emily didn't mean it like that. Yes, she did, my daughter smiled. And don't make me out to be a monster. I have the right to choose who I spend the holidays with. I nodded silently, picked up my bag, and headed for the door. Inside, I was boiling, but I kept my composure. At the door, I turned around and smiled, not at Emily, but at the children and Jeremis. The pie is for you. Enjoy your meal. I left, closing the door gently behind me. Only when I was in the car did I allow myself to take a few deep breaths, trying to calm down. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted the key into the ignition. 23 years ago, when Emily was only 19, I helped her with the down payment on her apartment. Then there was college, which I paid for in part by working 2 jobs at 2 hospitals. Then there was the wedding to Jeremis, modest by today's standards, but still a significant expense. And 6 years ago, they decided to buy a bigger house, this brick mansion in a quiet neighborhood. Emily called me in tears, telling me how the bank had turned them down for a favorable mortgage because of Jermaine's low income. Of course, I came to the rescue. I opened a special account and set up monthly transfers to cover almost half of their payments. Emily swore it was temporary, a year at most, until Jeremis found a better job. A year stretched into 6 years, I didn't mind. Helping my children was natural to me. But with each passing year, Emily became colder and more distant. It was as if my help wasn't bringing us closer together, but pushing her away from me. And then today, I didn't invite you to Mother's Day. Words I never expected to hear from my own daughter. Starting the car, I glanced back at the house one last time. Silhouettes were visible in the dining room window. They were continuing their dinner as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been there. Fatigue suddenly overwhelmed me. I slowly pulled out onto the road, heading for my small apartment on the other side of town. A single tear rolled down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it away. Enough. For too long, I had allowed my daughter to take advantage of my kindness, taking it for granted. Something had to change, and it looked like I would have to start. My apartment greeted me with silence and coolness. I flipped the light switch, and the old chandelier flooded the small living room with light, revealing a worn sofa and bookshelves along the walls. Everything here was modest but cozy, a real home for a woman who had worked as a nurse at Derby Hospital for almost 40 years. I kicked off my shoes, went into the kitchen, and put the kettle on. Thoughts of tonight kept running through my mind. Emily's words rang in my ears. "I didn't invite you to Mother's Day." 6 words, each one hitting home. After making the tea, I settled into an old armchair by the window. Outside the window, a light rain was falling, the drops blurring the lights of the neighboring houses. Somewhere out there in one of those houses lived my daughter, in a house I had paid for years without asking for anything in return. A photograph on the shelf opposite stared back at me. Emily in her prom dress, 18 years old, a radiant smile, her whole life ahead of her. Next to her was me, 10 kilograms heavier, with dark circles under my eyes from night shifts, but also smiling. Back then, everything was different. Emily was born when I was 25. Her father, Patrick, left us when she was 3. He just packed his things and disappeared with some barmaid. We never saw him again. I was left alone with a small child, a mortgage, and 2 jobs to pay for it all. I remember how I scrimped and saved, cooking meals for the week ahead, buying clothes at thrift stores, giving up all entertainment, all so that Emily could have the best I could give her, and she did. A good school, dance lessons, summer camps, new textbooks. I never complained, even though there were days when I was literally exhausted. When Emily wanted to go to university to study journalism, I sold our small house and moved into this apartment to pay for her education. She promised she would work hard to pay back every penny as soon as she graduated and got a job at a prestigious publication. But life had other plans. In her senior year, she met Jeremis, a quiet guy with ambition but no financial means. They got married quickly and Emily's journalism career was forgotten. Instead, she got a job at a bakery, temporarily until Jeremis got on his feet. I didn't interfere. It was her choice. But when they decided to buy their first apartment, I couldn't refuse to help with the down payment. Then came the wedding, then the birth of Willow, then Havish. And every time I gave the last of what I had to make things easier for them. And then, 6 years ago, a new house. "Mom, this is the last time I'll ask. I swear as soon as Jermaine gets a raise, we'll pay you back." I believed her, opened a special account, and set up automatic payments. £400 a month went toward their mortgage, £400 that I could have spent on myself, on a new car to replace my old Fiat, on a trip to Italy that I had always dreamed of, on arthritis treatment that I had been putting off for years. I took a sip of my cold tea. The rain intensified, drumming on the eaves. How many more years was I going to put up with this? How much more humiliation did I have to endure to understand that there would be no gratitude, ever? My phone vibrated, a message from Heavy. "Grandma, thanks for the headphones. They're cool. Sorry about Mom today." I smiled. At least my grandchildren had grown up to be good people, despite everything. I quickly typed a reply. "You're welcome, dear. Don't worry, everything's fine." Nothing was fine, but the boy shouldn't have to suffer because of our adult problems. The phone rang again. This time, a voice call from Merle, my old friend, whom I had met in nursing school and worked with at the hospital for almost 30 years. "Tallulah?" Her hoarse voice sounded concerned. "Are you okay? I called an hour ago, but you didn't answer." "I was at Emily's for dinner." I sighed heavily. "Just got back." "How did it go?" "Judging by the sound of your voice, not very well." I told her about the evening, leaving out no details. Marla was the only person who knew everything about my relationship with my daughter, including the monthly mortgage payments. "She didn't invite you for Mother's Day?" Marl asked, unable to hide her indignation. "Really? After everything you've done for her?" "Imagine that," I said with a bitter smile. "And she said it right at the table in front of Jermaine and the kids. What did you do?" "Nothing." I smiled and left. "Tallulah," Marl's voice became stern. "You've let her walk all over you for too long. How long have you been paying for their house? 6 years? And before that, the apartment, college, the wedding?" "I know, Marl," I replied wearily. "But what can I do?" She's my daughter. So what? That doesn't give her the right to treat you like an ATM. You need to stop financing her right now. I was silent, staring at the photo of Emily smiling. Merle continued. Listen to me. You've worked your whole life to help her. And what do you get in return? I didn't invite you to Mother's Day? You deserve better. Stop paying their mortgage and then she'll learn the value of her arrogance. But the children, I began. The children will grow up and treat you the same way if they see that you allow yourself to be treated this way. Merle cut me off. It's not about the money, Tallulah. It's about respect. I closed my eyes. Merle was right, and I knew it. For years, I had told myself that I was sacrificing everything for my daughter's happiness. But did that make Emily happier? Or did it just teach her to expect that her mother would always bail her out, no matter what? Maybe you're right, I said quietly. Something has to change. That's the spirit, Marl said approvingly. So what are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need to think it over. Just don't take too long. And keep me posted. Now go to bed. You sound exhausted. After talking to Marl, I sat for a long time, staring into the darkness outside the window. What if I really stopped paying their mortgage? What if I closed that account? Would Emily be able to cope? Would it affect my grandchildren? The thought that Jeremy might still be unaware of my financial assistance also troubled me. Had Emily never told him where half of the monthly mortgage payment came from? It would be so like her to take credit for my help and pass it off as her own. I got up and went into the small study where I kept all my important documents. In the desk drawer was a folder with bank statements. I opened it and looked through the monthly withdrawals. £400 every 15th of the month. An automatic payment to Emily's account marked mortgage. Over 6 years, it had added up to an impressive sum, almost £29,000. £29,000 that I could have spent on myself, on treatment, on vacations, on a new car, on anything. I took out my phone and opened the banking app. A few taps and there it was, the account from which the money had been withdrawn. There was still about £2,000 left in it, just enough for 5 months. My fingers froze over the screen. Did I really want to do this? Wasn't it too cruel? Would Emily take revenge by forbidding me to see my grandchildren? I remembered her face when she said those words. Cold, distant, without a hint of regret. I didn't invite you to Mother's Day, as if erasing everything I had done for her. My whole life dedicated to her, and something inside me broke. Or maybe it was the opposite. It fell into place. 3 clicks, and the automatic payment was canceled. A few more clicks, and the account was closed, the balance transferred to my main account. I took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, I felt a strange sense of relief, as if I had shed a heavy burden I had been carrying for too long. I knew there would be consequences. I knew Emily would be furious, that I might not see my grandchildren for a while, that I would have to explain myself to Jermaine. But for the first time in many years, I thought about myself instead of how to please my daughter. It wasn't an impulsive decision, nor was it an act of revenge. It was a necessary step, painful, but necessary. You can't maintain a toxic relationship forever, even if it's with your own daughter. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to stop indulging their worst qualities. I closed the folder and put my phone away. Tomorrow would be a new day. A day when Tallulah Gask would finally start living for herself, not for her ungrateful daughter. For the first time in many years, I felt a strange anticipation, as if I had opened the door to a new life where my own desires and needs also mattered. I went back to my bedroom and lay down without turning on the light. The rain drummed on the roof like a metronome, counting the seconds of a new chapter in my life. I knew I had made the right decision, a difficult one, but the right one. Sometimes you have to let go in order to move on, even if you're letting go of someone you love. The next 3 days passed in a strange calm. I waited for Emily to call, apologies, reproaches, anything. But the phone was silent. No messages, no missed calls. It was as if that evening had never happened. I couldn't take it anymore and called my grandchildren just to make sure they were okay. Heavy was a little quiet, but he thanked me for the headphones. Willow said she was preparing for exams and was very busy. Neither of them mentioned the incident at dinner. On the 4th day, I met Marl at our favorite cafe on the corner of Mill Street. We had been going there since we worked at the hospital across the street. The cafe was our refuge after hard shifts. So she didn't even call? Marl stirred the sugar in her cappuccino. That's strange. I thought she'd at least try to find out why you left so suddenly. She probably doesn't care, I shrugged. Or she thinks I should apologize for ruining their dinner. So what now? Are you determined to cancel the payments? I already did. I sipped my tea. I closed the account that same evening. Merle's eyes widened. My goodness, I didn't expect you to be so decisive. When are they due to pay the mortgage? The 15th. I glanced at the calendar on my phone. That's tomorrow. I wonder if she knows you canceled the payment, Merle said thoughtfully. Or is she waiting until the last day, hoping you'll change your mind? I don't know, I replied honestly. But I'm not going to change my mind. Sometimes you have to be tough to get people to respect you. I completely agree, Merle squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Tallulah. It's about time you did that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, imagining how Emily would discover the next day that there was £400 missing from the account. What would she think? What would she say to Jeremis? How would she explain why she suddenly couldn't pay the mortgage she had supposedly been paying all these years? Part of me felt a grim satisfaction. The other part, the maternal part, accustomed to protecting and defending, was worried and doubtful. Had I done the right thing? Had I gone too far? The 15th arrived without fanfare. I woke up, made myself some tea, watered the flowers on the windowsill, and even managed to go to morning yoga for seniors at the neighborhood community center. I deliberately left my phone at home. I didn't want to be distracted. When I returned, notifications were flashing on the screen. 3 missed calls from Emily, 2 from an unknown number, 1 message on Messenger. Mom, call me back urgently! I went to the kitchen, made myself a sandwich, and only then picked up my phone again. 2 more missed calls. Emily was clearly panicking. I decided not to call back. Instead, I typed a short message. Since I'm not part of the family on Mother's Day, my money is no longer part of your mortgage. The reply came instantly, as if Emily was sitting with her phone in her hands, waiting for my reaction. You can't do this. You promised to help. I have helped for 6 years. That's enough, I replied. My phone rang. It was Emily. I ignored it. Another message. Mom, we're having problems with the bank. They've already sent a late payment notice. This will ruin our credit rating. I didn't answer. Let her suffer a little. The day before, I had calculated that over the past 6 years, I'd transferred almost £29,000 to Emily and Jeremy. Money I could have spent on myself, on my needs, on treatment for the arthritis that had been bothering me more and more in recent years. The phone continued to vibrate. Messages poured in one after another. Mom, please. This is very serious. You can't just cancel the payment without warning us. We were counting on that money. We don't have that kind of money right now. It's mean to use finances as leverage. You always said you helped selflessly. I smiled. I had helped selflessly, until I heard those words at dinner. Sometimes it only takes one drop to overflow the cup. By midday, Emily's tactics had changed. Now the messages were plaintive. Mom, I don't understand why you're so upset. I just wanted to spend a day with the kids without any extra people. Jeremy is furious about the deadline. He blames me. Is that what you wanted? If you wanted to ruin my marriage, you succeeded. Congratulations. I didn't respond. Inside, a strange, almost forgotten feeling grew, a sense of self-worth. It was as if I had finally straightened my back after years of slouching. After lunch, a message came from Willow. Grandma, why aren't you answering Mom? She's crying. What's going on? It was unfair. Using children as emotional pawns was typical of Emily, but I wasn't going to drag my grandchildren into our conflict. Honey, your mom and I are having a little misunderstanding. We'll work it out. Don't worry about it and focus on getting ready for your exams. I love you. An hour later, Heavy called. I answered the phone. I couldn't ignore my grandson. Grandma? His voice sounded alarmed. What's going on? Mom is yelling, Dad is slamming doors, and no one is explaining anything. Honey, these are adult problems. I tried to sound calm. Your parents will work it out. How are things at school? Fine. He hesitated. Grandma, Mom said you stopped giving us money for the house. Is that true? So Emily had decided to fill the children in on the financial situation. Very like her. Heavy. I've helped your family for many years, I said cautiously. But now I've decided it's time for your parents to manage on their own. It has nothing to do with you or Willow. I'll always be there for both of you. I didn't know you paid for our house, he said quietly. Mom said she and Dad paid for everything. It's complicated, sweetie. Let's not worry about that right now, okay? Okay, he agreed uncertainly. Grandma, are you coming to see us this weekend? I have a game on Saturday. My heart sank. I always went to his football games. Of course I'll come. I wouldn't miss it for the world. After talking to Havish, I felt guilty. The children shouldn't have to suffer because of our conflict with Emily. But on the other hand, it was Emily who got them into this situation by telling them about the money. The messages continued into the evening. Emily went from anger to pleading and back again. Mom, if this is because of Mother's Day, I'm sorry. Of course you're invited. We'll throw a party for you. Do you even realize that your actions could cost your grandchildren their home? The bank won't wait. Please call me. We need to talk like adults. Jeremy thinks I'm a liar. Thanks for that. I still hadn't replied, even though the last message had hit me hard. Could Jermaine really not have known about my help? Had Emily been spending my money as her own all this time? By 8 o'clock in the evening, I was tired of the constant calls and turned off my phone. I turned on my favorite detective series, made some tea, and settled down on the couch with my knitting. I needed to take my mind off things. The knock on the door sounded unexpectedly loud in the silence of the apartment. I jumped, dropping my knitting needles. It was almost 9 o'clock, too late for a casual visit. Who is it? I asked, approaching the door. Tallulah, it's Jermaine. Can I come in? I froze. Jermaine had never come to see me alone without Emily. Something serious must have happened. Opening the door, I saw my brother-in-law, pale with red eyes as if he hadn't slept for days. He was holding a folder in his hands. Come in, I said, stepping aside to let him in. Is something wrong with the children? No, the children are fine, he said, walking into the living room and sinking heavily onto the sofa. Tallulah, I need to talk to you about money and about Emily. I sat down opposite him, feeling my heart begin to beat faster. I'm listening. Today, the bank sent a notice about a missed mortgage payment, Jermaine said quietly, not looking at me. I didn't understand why Emily was so panicked. We usually manage to make the payments without any problems. Then she confessed. He fell silent, swallowing hard. Confessed what? I prompted gently. That you've been paying half the mortgage for the last 6 years. He finally looked up. Every month, £400, and that you suddenly stopped paying without warning. You didn't know? I asked cautiously. I had no idea. Jeremy smiled bitterly. Emily said it was her savings from bonuses at work. I believed her, like a complete idiot. He opened the folder he had brought with him. Inside were bank statements, neat columns of numbers with lines highlighted in yellow marker. I checked all our accounts for the last few years. Every month on the 15th, £400 was transferred from your account to Emily's account, and she transferred it to the mortgage account. 6 years, Tallulah. For 6 years, I didn't know we were living off your money. I was silent, not knowing what to say. Part of me felt relieved, so Jeremis really didn't know. Another part was stunned by the scale of Emily's deception. Why didn't you tell me? His voice sounded hurt. All these years, we've seen each other at family dinners, talked, and you never once. I thought you knew, I said quietly. Emily said you were both grateful for the help, but preferred not to discuss it so you wouldn't feel obligated. I respected that decision. Jeremis covered his face with his hands. God, I was so naive. All these years she's been lying to me. She was spending your money as if it were hers, and I wondered how she managed to get such bonuses at her bakery. Jeremy, I never wanted to cause problems in your family, I said, touching his shoulder gently. I just wanted to help. I know, he said, lowering his hands, and I'm grateful, really. But why did you decide to stop the payments now? What happened? I told him about that evening, about Emily's words, about my decision. He listened silently, nodding from time to time. Now I understand, he finally said. I didn't invite you to Mother's Day. After everything you did for her, no wonder you were angry. It's not about anger, Jermaine. I shook my head. It's about respect, about recognition, about basic gratitude. I don't expect Emily to kiss my hands for helping her, but at least not insulting someone who has supported you for years. That doesn't seem like too much to ask. You're right. He looked completely broken. You're absolutely right. And I don't blame you for canceling the payments. I would have done the same in your place. We were silent. A car drove by outside, its headlights momentarily illuminating the room. What now? I asked. The mortgage? The house? I don't know, Jeremis replied honestly. We have some savings, but they're not endless. I can take on extra shifts at work. Maybe we'll have to sell the car. He fell silent, lost in thought. In any case, these are our problems, not yours. You've helped us too much already. What about Emily? How did she take it? At first she was furious. She screamed and accused you of betrayal. Then, when I started asking questions, she tried to wriggle out of it, saying she hadn't told me so as not to worry me or make me feel like a failure, Germaine said with a bitter smile. And then I found the statements and the receipts from the shops. It turns out that while I was scrimping and saving, working 60 hours a week, my wife was spending hundreds of pounds on designer clothes and spa treatments, and she was always complaining about how hard it was to make ends meet. I gasped. I didn't know that. So Emily wasn't just hiding my help. She was spending the family money on herself while Jeremis was slaving away at several jobs. I'm so sorry, I said sincerely. Ed. Me too, he said, standing up. Tallulah, I didn't come here to ask you to resume the payments. I came to apologize for not knowing, for letting this happen, and for Emily saying those awful things to you. You don't deserve to be treated like that. He looked so sincere, so devastated that my heart ached. Emily was lucky to have a husband like him, even though she didn't seem to appreciate it. Jeremy, it's not your fault, I said, standing up too. You couldn't have known if she was hiding it. I should have known. He shook his head. You can't live with someone for 6 years and not notice that something's wrong. What are you going to do now? I asked. I mean, you and Emily. I don't know. He sighed. Right now, I'm not even sure I know the woman I married. But we have children. We have to work this out somehow. Tallulah. He trailed off. I know I have no right to ask, but could you talk to Emily? She needs to understand what she's done. I was silent, thinking about his request. On the one hand, I didn't want to interfere in their relationship. On the other hand, this was about my daughter, my grandchildren, about a family that was falling apart before my eyes. All right, I finally said. I'll talk to her, but not today. I need to think it over. Thank you. Jeremis looked grateful. And I'm sorry again, for everything. He left, leaving me alone with my heavy thoughts. The story turned out to be even more complicated than I had imagined. Emily wasn't just ungrateful. She'd been lying to her husband for years, taking credit for my help and spending family money on her whims. I turned my phone back on. 27 missed calls from Emily. The last message sent 10 minutes ago. Mom, Jeremis is at your place. Don't believe a word he says. He's exaggerating everything. I put the phone down on the table without answering. Things were taking an unexpected turn. I wanted to teach my daughter a lesson, but not destroy her family. However, it seemed that the problems in their marriage were much deeper than I had thought. And my decision had simply blown the lid off a pot that had been boiling for a long time. Saturday morning was unexpectedly sunny for Derby. I stood at the window with a cup of tea, watching the neighbor's cat hunt butterflies in my small front yard. The phone was silent. After Jeremis's visit, Emily had stopped calling. Probably she and her husband were having long conversations, or long arguments. I didn't know which was worse. Around 11, the phone finally rang. It was Jeremis. Good morning, Tallulah. His voice sounded firm and determined. I'm gathering the whole family at 4 o'clock today. We need to have a serious talk, all of us together. Can you come? A family council? I asked. Yes. He hesitated. Emily knows about the meeting. At first she refused, but I insisted. The children need to be there too. They have a right to know the truth. Are you sure you want to involve Hevis and Willow? I was nervous at the thought of my grandchildren witnessing the conflict between Emily and me. They're already involved, Jeremis sighed. Emily told them her side of the story. Now they need to hear ours. And anyway, he paused. Our family has kept too many secrets for too long. It's time to clear the air. I agreed to go, although the thought of the confrontation ahead made me anxious. After talking to Jeremis, I called Marl for advice. He's right, my friend said with conviction. It's time to dot the I's and cross the T's. Emily has been waiting to hear the bitter truth for a long time. But the children? They're not little anymore, Tallulah. Willow is almost 18. She's practically an adult, and heavy enough to understand what's going on. Maybe this will teach them to value honesty in relationships. I put on my best dress, dark blue with a small floral pattern, not because I wanted to impress, but to feel more confident. In difficult times, even the right clothes can be a kind of armor. I took the bus to Emily and Jeremis's house. My car was acting up again, and I didn't want to be late. The sun was already sinking toward the horizon, painting the brick facades of the houses in warm golden hues. At any other time, I would have enjoyed the walk, but today every step was difficult. Jeremis opened the door. His face was tense but determined. The house was unusually quiet, no familiar noise from the TV, no music from Hevis's room. Come in, Jeremis said, letting me into the house. Everyone's in the living room. I entered and saw Emily sitting in the far armchair. She looked pale, her eyes red from crying, but she sat up straight, even defiantly. The children were huddled on the sofa, quiet and alert. Willow looked away, avoiding my gaze. Hevis, on the other hand, stared intently at me. Hi, I tried to smile, but it came out unconvincing. Hello, Mom, Emily replied dryly. Jeremy thinks we need this family meeting. Although I don't understand what there is to talk about. Jeremy walked to the center of the room as if taking the position of a moderator. We have things to talk about. His voice was calm but firm. I've learned a lot about our family over the last few days, about money, about lies, and I think it's time everyone heard the truth. Emily rolled her eyes. If you're going to make me look like a monster in front of the kids, that's low. I'm going to tell them how things really are, Jeremis replied. Without exaggeration, but without leaving anything out. He turned to the children. Willow, Havish, you know we've been having trouble paying the mortgage? They nodded uncertainly. Your mother told you that Grandma suddenly stopped helping us, Jermaine continued. That's true, but there are some details you don't know about. He paused. First of all, I only found out about Grandma's help the day before yesterday. She's been sending money for 6 years, and all this time I thought we were managing on our own. Willow looked at her mother in surprise. Mom, you didn't tell Dad? Emily crossed her arms over her chest. I didn't want him to feel like a failure. He was so proud of providing for his family. Don't lie to me now, Jermaine shook his head. You hid it to control the finances, so I wouldn't know how much money was really coming into the family and how much you were spending. What are you talking about? Emily sat up straight in her chair. The 340 pounds you spent at the spa last month, Jermaine replied. The new bag that cost 260. The shoes that cost as much as my 2-week salary. All this time you've been telling me how hard things are, how we have to save on everything, how we can barely afford the mortgage. And you've been spending hundreds of pounds on your whims. Emily stared at him, her eyes wide. Have you been looking through my bills? Checking my purchases? I had to, Jermaine raised his voice. After I found out about the money from Tallulah. After I realized I'd been living a lie for 6 years. Willow and Havish exchanged glances. I could see how confused they were, trying to make sense of what was happening. Dad, Willow began cautiously, but is it really that important? I mean, if Grandma wanted to help, and Mom... It's not about helping, sweetheart, I interrupted, trying to sound gentle. It's about trust, about truth. I've always been happy to help your family, with money or anything else. But it hurt me that your mother didn't appreciate that help. And in the end, she refused to see me even on Mother's Day. It was just one day, Emily muttered. I don't understand why you had to make such a big deal out of canceling the payment. No, Emily. I shook my head. It's not just one day. It's the last straw after years of alienation, after you pushed me away time and time again, taking my help for granted. I'm a person, not an ATM. See? Emily turned to the children. Your grandmother uses money as a way to control you. She only helped us so she could have leverage. That's not true. Heavy said quietly, looking at his mother. Grandma never made us do anything for money. She just helped. And you? He hesitated. You didn't even tell us that the birthday presents were from her. The room fell silent. I looked at my grandson in confusion. What are you talking about, Havish? The boy glanced guiltily at his mother. Last year, when I got a new bike, Mom said that she and Dad bought it for me. But last week, I accidentally found your card in Mom's drawer. It said, "To dear Havish on his 14th birthday from Grandma." I felt something break inside me. I had bought that bike, bright red with 21 speeds, just the one Havish had dreamed of. It had cost a lot, but I wanted to make my grandson happy. I had no idea that Emily had taken the gift for herself. Emily? I turned to my daughter. Is this true? She lowered her eyes, and that gesture spoke louder than any words. I just didn't want the kids to think we couldn't afford nice gifts for them, she mumbled. That we need Grandma's help. How many more gifts of mine did you take? My voice trembled with hurt. Emily was silent, but Willow suddenly looked up. My laptop? She asked quietly. The one I got before I started college? Did Grandma buy that too? Seeing that Emily didn't answer, Jeremus nodded. Yes, Willow. Grandma paid for your laptop, and your Spanish lessons last year, and the school choir trip to Edinburgh. I don't understand. Willow looked shaken. Why? Why hide from us that your grandmother did so many nice things? Because your mother didn't want to feel dependent, Jeremus replied, glancing at his wife. She always wanted to look perfect in your eyes, successful, self-sufficient, even if it meant lying. That's not fair. Emily finally looked up, her eyes full of tears. Yes, I hid some things, but only because I didn't want everything in my life to be connected to my mother. I've lived my whole life in her shadow. The perfect Tallulah, the successful nurse, respected by everyone, loved by everyone, and I'm just her plain daughter who hasn't achieved anything on her own. I looked at her in amazement. Emily had never spoken so openly about her feelings for me before. Emily, I began gently, I've never compared you to me. I've never thought you had to achieve anything to deserve my love. I've always been proud of you, just for being you. That's not true! She jumped up from her chair. You always made it clear that I could do more, be better. Why don't you finish college, Emily? Why did you quit journalism, Emily? Why don't you look for a better job, Emily? Always, always those questions, that disappointment in your voice. I was stunned by her words. Yes, I sometimes asked my daughter about her plans, but I never thought she took it as pressure or criticism. I just wanted you to fulfill your potential, I said quietly, to have more opportunities than I did. What if my idea of happiness isn't the same as yours? Emily asked bitterly. What if I don't want to be successful in your eyes? What if I'm happy just being a manager at a bakery, not, I don't know, a hospital chief physician? I never asked you to become a head doctor. I shook my head. I just wanted you to be happy. No, you wanted me to be like you. Emily clenched her fists. Strong, independent, successful. And when I didn't live up to your expectations, you started helping me financially to make me feel even more worthless, even more dependent. Emily, that's not fair, Jeremus interjected. Your mother helped us because she loves you, all of us. Yes, she helped, Emily almost shouted. And I paid for every penny with guilt. Every time she came to our house, I saw that look in her eyes. Look, I'm helping you, and you should be grateful. Every time I felt small and worthless. I was silent, shocked. Had Emily really perceived my help all this time not as an expression of love, but as a way of controlling her? Had every gift I gave her, every money transfer, only widened the gap between us? Mom, Willow's voice sounded unusually mature. But if you felt that way, why didn't you tell Grandma? Why didn't you refuse her help? Emily slumped back into her chair, suddenly deflated. Because I couldn't, she whispered. We really needed the money. And I got used to a certain standard of living. I didn't want you to grow up poor like me. You didn't grow up poor, I said gently. Yes, we didn't have luxuries, but you always had everything you needed. You don't understand, Emily flushed again. I remember how the other kids at school laughed at my secondhand clothes, how I couldn't go to the cafe with them because I didn't have any pocket money, how I had to work part-time at 15 to buy myself a decent pair of jeans. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I really didn't know that Emily's childhood had been so painful. I did everything I could, working 2 jobs, but obviously it wasn't enough. Emily, I approached her, but she pulled away. I didn't know it was so hard for you, but believe me, I never wanted you to feel worse because of my help. I just loved you and wanted you to have everything I didn't have. But I didn't want to be the eternally grateful daughter. Emily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I didn't want every decision I made to be judged in terms of, was it worth it for Mom to try so hard for this? So yes, I hid your help. From Jermis, from the children, sometimes even from myself. I wanted to feel like I was living my own life, not an extension of yours. A heavy silence hung in the room. We all processed what we had heard. Confessions that had never been spoken aloud before. Resentments that had built up over the years. All these years, Jermis finally said, you lied to me. To all of us. Instead of being honest about your feelings, about your fears, you chose to weave a web of lies, and now we're all tangled up in it. Emily lowered her head. I know I did wrong, but I didn't know how else to do it. You could have just talked to me, I said, touching her shoulder gently. Told me that it was hard for you to accept my help, that you wanted more independence. Would you have listened? She asked bitterly. Or would you have told me I was ungrateful, that I didn't realize how lucky I was to have such a caring mother? I didn't know what to say. Maybe Emily was right. I had gotten used to thinking I knew what was best for her. I had gotten used to being a good mother without considering that my daughter had long since grown up and had a right to her own decisions and mistakes. I don't know, I admitted honestly. But I would try to understand. Heavy, who had been silently watching the adults, suddenly stood up and walked over to his mother. Mom, his voice sounded unexpectedly firm. I don't understand why you couldn't just tell us the truth. About Grandma, about the money, about everything. Would Willow and I love you any less? Emily looked at her son with tearful eyes. I was afraid you would love Grandma more, that you would think I was not enough. That's silly, Hevish said bluntly. You're our mom. We don't love you for gifts or money. And we love Grandma, Willow added. Not because she buys us things, but because she's kind and caring. And it's not fair that you hid her gifts from us. I wish I could have thanked her myself. Emily flinched as if her daughter's words had caused her physical pain. I know I did the wrong thing, she said, looking up at me. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't want things to turn out this way. Me neither, I replied quietly. I never thought my help could cause so much pain. What now? Jermis asked, looking at all of us. How do we move forward? It was a good question. Years of misunderstanding and hurt feelings couldn't be overcome in a single conversation, no matter how sincere it was. But the first step had been taken. We were finally talking to each other honestly. I think, I began cautiously, we all need to learn to communicate in a new way, openly, without secrets, without manipulation. And we need to learn to live independently, added Jermis, glancing at Emily, without Tallulah's financial support. It won't be easy, but it's necessary, for our dignity and self-respect. Emily nodded, looking at her hands. I agree. I'll try to be more honest. With all of you. And with myself. Willow got up from the couch and came over to me. Grandma, thank you for everything you've done for us. And I'm sorry I didn't thank you sooner. I hugged my granddaughter, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. It's never too late to start over, sweetheart. Heavy joined us, hugging me from the other side. I love you, Grandma, he said simply. Looking at them, I knew that no matter what happened between me and Emily, these children were worth every minute of pain and every penny spent. For them, it was worth going through all of this and finding the strength to reconcile. Of course, not all the problems were solved overnight. Emily still had her inferiority complex. I still had my habit of being overly protective, and Germaine still felt hurt from years of deception. But we had taken the first step. We had acknowledged these problems and decided to work on them together. As I was about to leave, Emily unexpectedly came up to me in the hallway. Mom, she hesitated, about Mother's Day. I want you to come, if you still want to. I looked at her, my complicated, contradictory, but still beloved daughter. Of course I'll come, I smiled softly. And I promise I won't bring apple pie if you don't want me to. No, she smiled weakly in response. The pie is fine. Heavy will be happy. It was a small step, but in the right direction. We both knew we had a long road ahead of us to true reconciliation. But now that the truth was finally out, we had a chance to build a new relationship. One that was more honest, more mature, based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The week after the family meeting passed in a strange lull. I went about my business, taking photography classes, working in the garden, meeting with Merle. But I couldn't stop thinking about my family. About how many years we had lived without understanding each other, how our good intentions had turned into resentment and unspoken words. On Thursday evening, as I was finishing watering the flowers on the windowsill, the doorbell rang. Jeremis was standing on the doorstep with a folder of documents in his hands. "Good evening, Tallulah," he said. He looked tired but calm. "I'm sorry to drop in unannounced. May I come in? We need to discuss some practical matters." I invited him into the living room and offered him tea. He declined, getting straight to the point. "Emily and I have talked a lot about the situation," Germaine said, opening the folder on the coffee table. "And we've come to the conclusion that we should return the money you put toward the mortgage." I shook my head. "Jeremy, there's no need for that. I didn't help you so that you could ask for it back." "I know." He met my gaze. "But it's not just about the money. It's a matter of principle. You've supported us for too long. It's time we started taking responsibility for our own decisions." He took several sheets of paper with calculations out of the folder. "I've calculated the total amount. £28,800 over all these years. It's a huge sum. I understand that you can't pay it all back at once," I said gently. "Of course not," Jeremis nodded, "but I've drawn up a repayment plan. If we pay £150 a month, we can pay it off in about 16 years. 16 years! I laughed involuntarily. "By then, I'll be an old woman if I'm still alive." "We can discuss other options," Jeremis replied seriously. "Maybe sell something valuable or take on extra work." I looked at him closely. This man was truly willing to spend years paying off a debt that wasn't even his responsibility. "Jeremy," I put my hand on his shoulder, "I don't need this money. I gave it to you from the bottom of my heart, not expecting to get it back. It was my gift to your family. But after everything that's happened," he hesitated. "After how Emily treated you, it hurt," I admitted. "But it's not about the money. It's about respect, recognition, gratitude. You don't have to pay me back every penny to show you appreciate my help." Jeremy looked uncertain. "But we have to do something, for our own dignity." I thought about it. He was right. Forgiving the debt entirely could give the impression that I didn't care about what had happened, that I was allowing him to continue taking me for granted. "All right," I said finally. "Here's what I propose. Instead of paying me back the entire $29,000, why don't you set up an education fund for Willow and Havish? Put £100 a month into it for their future, college, a down payment on a house, whatever. It will be your contribution with no strings attached." "And the rest of the money?" Jeremis asked. "Consider it a gift," I smiled. "From a grandmother who loves her grandchildren too much and sometimes forgets that their parents have a right to make decisions too." Jeremis looked at me for a long time, then slowly nodded. "That's fair," he said, holding out his hand. "Thank you, Tallulah, for everything." We sealed the agreement with a handshake. It was the first step toward building a new, healthier relationship in our family. The next day, I met Emily at a cafe near her work. She had suggested the meeting herself, the first time in years that she had taken the initiative. We sat at a corner table, awkwardly stirring our tea. The pause dragged on. "Jeremis told me about your conversation," Emily finally said. "About the money." "Yes, we worked it out," I confirmed. "You shouldn't have forgiven the debt," she said, not looking me in the eye. "Not after what I did to you." "Emily," I leaned closer, "I'm not going to blackmail my daughter with money to earn her love or respect. That would be even worse than what you accused me of." She finally looked up, her eyes red from lack of sleep, a wrinkle between her eyebrows that I hadn't noticed before. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days," she said quietly. "About us, about what I've done all these years, about how I lied to Jeremis, to the children, to you, and to myself." She paused. "It was wrong. I knew it, but I couldn't stop." It was as if each new lie required the next to keep the whole house of cards standing. Why? I asked simply. Why was it so hard to just be honest? Emily was silent for a long time, gathering her thoughts. Remember when I was 13 and I brought home a report card with all... You said, Emily, you can do better. I was a straight A student at your age, despite all the difficulties. I didn't remember that conversation very well, but I nodded. You didn't understand what those words meant to me, Emily continued. You were my role model, strong, smart, independent, a nurse who was respected even by doctors, a single mother who raised a child and ran a household without anyone's help. I never felt I could measure up to you. I didn't want you to compare yourself to me, I said gently. I wanted you to be yourself, the best version of yourself. But what if the best version of me still didn't measure up to your standards? Emily asked bitterly. What if I'm just different? Not as determined, not as strong. What if I just wanted a simple life, a family, children, a job without a lot of responsibility? I thought about it. Was I really unconsciously pressuring my daughter, expecting her to be something she didn't want to be or couldn't be? I never thought about it, I admitted. I thought every mother wanted the best for her child, education, a career, success. What if the best for me isn't a career or success? Emily asked quietly. What if happiness for me is just a quiet life with my family, without stress and the rat race? Then I should have respected that, I said, covering her hand with mine. And I'm sorry I didn't realize that sooner. We talked for a long time that day, about our different views on life, about unfulfilled expectations, about childhood hurts that had grown into adult problems. Not all issues were resolved, not all wounds were healed, but we began the journey toward a better understanding of each other. So what now? Emily asked as our meeting came to an end. How do we move forward? I think we need clear boundaries, I replied. I will no longer interfere in your and Germain's financial affairs. No regular payments, no hidden help. If you need my support, in any sense, you can just ask and we'll discuss it openly. Fair enough, Emily nodded. What about the grandchildren? I would like to continue communicating with them directly, without intermediaries, I said firmly. If I want to give them a gift, whether it's something material or money for their education, I would like them to know that it's from me. Emily tensed visibly but nodded. Okay, but we need to discuss major purchases in advance. I don't want you to override our parenting decisions. Agreed, I smiled. See, we're already learning to compromise. Mother's Day fell on a sunny Sunday. I woke up early, feeling slightly excited about the day ahead. The last 2 weeks had been filled with difficult conversations, moments of honesty, and periods of awkward silence. We were all learning a new way of communicating, without manipulation, without hidden resentment, without financial leverage. Emily called the day before to confirm the invitation. We'll be waiting for you at 2, she said. Nothing special, just a family dinner. Should I bring anything? I asked. Maybe dessert? There was a pause on the other end of the line. If you want, you can bake your apple pie, Emily finally replied. Heavy will be happy. A small victory. My pie had found a place on their table again. I arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, with the pie in my hands and small gifts for everyone. Photos I had taken and printed out in my class. Handmade frames held pictures of our family, each one capturing a special moment. Havish opened the door and immediately gave me a big hug. Happy Mother's Day, Grandma! Those simple words took my breath away. In previous years, my grandchildren had congratulated me by phone, or when we happened to meet. Today, I was here as a mother, as a grandmother, as a full member of the family. The house looked festive. There were fresh flowers on the table and the smell of roast meat in the air. Willow helped set the table, and Jeremus worked his magic in the kitchen. Emily met me in the living room, a little tense, but with a sincere smile. Happy holiday, Mom, she said awkwardly, hugging me with one arm and taking the pie with the other. Come in, we're almost ready. We all tried hard that day. The conversation at the table was a little strained, with careful avoidance of difficult topics, but without the obvious tension of previous years. Willow talked about her college plans, and Havish shared his successes on the school football team. Jeremy and Emily talked about their work projects. He had recently gotten a promotion, and she was preparing to open a new bakery in the neighborhood. I listened closely, noting how their relationship had changed since our candid conversation. There was more openness, less hidden resentment. Jeremy now knew the truth about the family's finances and was actively involved in planning the budget. Emily was learning to be honest, with him, with the children, with me, and with herself. After dinner, Emily took out a small box tied with a ribbon. "This is for you," she said, handing me the gift. "From all of us." Inside was a silver brooch in the shape of a medical cross with an engraving on the back. "To the best mom and grandmother from your grateful family." "This is very beautiful," I said, struggling to hold back tears. "Thank you." "I remember how you always wanted one," Emily said quietly, "when you worked at the hospital. But you said it was too expensive." I was touched that she remembered this little episode from the past. Maybe I had been hurt after all. Not always, not in everything, but in something important. "And these are my gifts for you," I said, handing out the photos. For Germs, a picture of him teaching Havish to hammer a nail, both of them focused, so similar in profile. For Willow, she's laughing in the rain, her head thrown back, the sun shining through the raindrops. For Havish, a moment of victory on the football field, triumph on his face, his arms raised in the air. And for Emily, she's little, about 5 years old, sitting on my lap with a book. We're both smiling, our faces so close, so similar. "I don't remember that day," Emily said, looking closely at the photo. "We were reading Alice in Wonderland," I smiled. "You wanted me to read one chapter over and over again." Something flashed in her eyes, a memory, tenderness, regret for lost closeness. "Thank you," she said, carefully placing the photo on the mantelpiece. "It will stay here." It was a small but important gesture, my presence in her home, in her life, but without pressure or imposition. Later, when Jeremis and the children went to the park, Emily and I stayed behind to clear the table. "Everything has changed, hasn't it?" she asked, loading the dishes into the dishwasher. "Yes," I agreed. "But maybe for the better?" "Maybe," she hesitated. "You know, I'm still learning. To be honest, to be myself, without the mask of the perfect daughter, the perfect mother." "I'm learning too," I said, handing her a cup. "To let go, not control, let you be yourself." We worked in comfortable silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The former closeness between us was gone, but something new had emerged. Mutual respect, recognition of each other's right to their own space and decisions. "Mom," Emily said suddenly, "I want you to know, I'm grateful for everything you've done for us, for all these years, for all the money, for all the support. I haven't always shown it, but I really am grateful." There was no familiar manipulative tone in her voice, no hidden subtext, just a sincere acknowledgement that I had waited so long for. "Thank you." I squeezed her hand. "That means a lot to me. And I'm working on myself," she continued, "with a therapist, to figure out these patterns of behavior, my jealousy of you, my inferiority complex, my habit of lying." I was surprised and touched. Emily had never admitted that she needed help. She had always considered herself self-sufficient. "That's a very brave step," I said sincerely. "I'm proud of you." "Not yet," she smiled weakly. "I've only just started. And I don't know how successful I'll be. It's important that you're trying," I hugged her. "The rest will come with time." When I left that evening, I felt calm, not euphoric, not completely reconciled, but calmly confident that we were on the right track. We had established new boundaries, both financial and emotional. We had begun to learn to respect each other's differences. We had taken the first steps toward a healthier relationship. I knew there was still a lot of work ahead. Emily had to deal with her inner demons, Jermaine had to rebuild trust that had been undermined by years of lies, and the children had to come to terms with a new understanding of family dynamics. I had to deal with my habit of controlling and making decisions for others. But on that Mother's Day, we all received an important gift, a chance to start over with honesty and mutual respect. Without money transfers as a substitute for emotional closeness, without manipulation and hidden resentments. I got into the car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw them, Emily, Jermaine, and the children, returning from their walk, standing at the door and waving goodbye. My family, imperfect, complicated, but mine. This time, as I drove away, I felt no bitterness or resentment. For the first time in a long time, I was leaving with hope, with faith that the bridges destroyed by years of misunderstanding could be rebuilt, that even the deepest wounds could heal, that love, real love, unconditional and without expectations, was still possible between us.